Well, I would like to start generating some key ideas that might go into a concourse if we were to take something like, why am I here? Why are we here for this particular conference? And I would like for you to start jotting these down on these little cards. I want the Q sample to be relatively small, so it'll probably only be about 15, 20 items at most. Were there enough of those cards, incidentally, to go around? Everybody's got enough? Okay. We've got more, good. Let's go around, and some of you just in general said, I'm here to learn about Q, and I'm sure there's a lot behind that. Some people mentioned some specific things, and I'm not sure that I can go back and identify who it was, but I remember Gabe, I think, was the first one. And you said something, if you could re-articulate that, you said you were interested in confirming some suspicions or disconfirming others. Could you try to remember about what it was you said the first time?
To elaborate on?
Not necessarily elaborate, just can you say again what it was that you said?
That beyond just learning general knowledge about Q,
Mm-hmm.
to confirm some suspicions I had or disconfirm
Mm-hmm.
suspicions
About Q.
about Q.
Uh-huh. So, I suggest now I'm going to write up some common language and try to capture what everybody, the different participants have said here. And I'd like for you to duplicate it so that everybody will have an identical Q sample in your own handwriting. And at the moment, as we retrieve these from the audience, if you could put a number, starting number 1, number 2, serially, say down in the lower left-hand corner, we will then take some statements from the total collection and renumber them for the Q sample so that we may get 20 or 30 of these. We'll eventually just take, a dozen or 15 for our purposes. So, we might say for number 1, and this, you just put this number 1 down the lower left-hand corner, beyond, I don't know if you'll be able to read this clearly, and so I'll say it aloud, and you may want to take it down as we're going. Beyond Q, as a technique, was it? Beyond the technicality?
General knowledge.
Yeah. Beyond, let's say, beyond a general knowledge of Q, to confirm some suspicions, to confirm or disconfirm suspicions, where that's understood to be suspicions about Q. All right. So this first one, beyond a general knowledge of Q, to confirm or disconfirm suspicions about Q. So if you just write that down. Now, somewhere along the line, I know you, yours was about rotation?
Yeah, it was moving from a Verimax to what you call a judgment, what I call a hand rotation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So,
and of course, there's more in that.
yeah, surely. Yeah. Well, an entire study could be made about rotation, about concerns and so forth. Any one of the statements, Stevenson often said, any one of the statements of any particular Q sample could be the launching pad for another whole study having to do with that. So all subjectivity is kind of a seamless web. You enter it at some arbitrary point, and you could again, any one of the studies could provide a window through which some other kind of study could be made. So, so we could have an entire study about questions about rotation and about the mathematics behind it. Of course, then you would expect that you'd be dealing with a more sophisticated, specialized group of people who take this particular topic as their focus. So if we were going to phrase that like this one, how would you want to say it? Moving beyond Verimax?
To
Yeah.
hand or judgmental rotation.
Okay, how about something then like moving beyond Verimax to determine its relationship to judgmental, to determine, moving beyond Verimax to determine its relationship to, and you called it hand rotation. Usually a good idea to edit the content as little as possible to stay in the natural language of whatever it is that you're studying. Relationship to hand rotation. All right. Eleanor, good to see you incidentally. You said something about the relationship to therapy, did you not? I remember you did as well, but...
It would be a connection.
Yeah. Well, either one of you. Could you elaborate on that in the same way so that we could create a kind of...
Learn more about Q's relationship to or Q's applications to therapy.
Mhm. Would that be good enough? Close enough? No, that's fine. That's fine. How about if we just put down Q's relationship to therapy? Okay. I'm going to get into a fog now. I don't remember specific things, although I do remember that some people said specific kinds of things. Could you start volunteering? What we're looking for, obviously, here is to get as much breadth as possible, so it would, some minor variation on one of these would be less useful as getting another topic or another concern.
Learning how to teach Q.
Okay. Learning how to teach Q, so number 4. Learning how to teach Q. Anybody else have? We need more, obviously.
Can I expand?
Sure.
There's
Yeah.
How to push Q beyond the boundaries that it's usually used in, beyond to new fields such as medicine.
So the boundaries as far as its applications.
Its usual application.
Okay. How to move Q beyond its usual applications? Is that good enough?
Or its usual fields in which it's used.
If we
More interdisciplinary. Just make that next.
more, or make another one.
Make it stay
another-
saying, make it more interdisciplinary.
Add that as number 6.
Yeah.
How about make Q more interdisciplinary? Make Q more interdisciplinary. Some other volunteers?
What was it that Al Calvin said? Al, what did you say?
His was something about learning, always glad to learn from colleagues, or something of that nature, as I recall. Sure. Yep. You're right. You're absolutely right. To learn more from colleagues. Yes, we needn't, to learn more from colleagues, we needn't restrict this to just intellectual things. Some people like to go to conferences and see old friends, pick up chicks. There might be all kinds of reasons why someone would go to a meeting.
Or goals.
Or to pick up Okies or whatever.
Steve, can I add
Yes,
on to that?
yes.
To examine Q as a method for mapping meaning.
For mapping
Meaning.
meaning. John Carr suggests here to use Q for mapping meaning. Q for mapping meaning. Yes, Mark.
You know, over the last year and a half, I've heard a lot about quantum theory
Mm-hmm.
and Q. And I actually said it in my mind that I was going to start talking to some people about that this
Mhm.
year to find out just what that's all about.
Could we, as a shorthand, one say the Q dash quantum connection?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. We may have to get to a little bit of shorthand here for the sake of time, and we all know what these mean when we put them down. Eleanor.
Q and dialogue, after you do your factor analysis and you talk to someone like that,
Q and dialogue. Would that be a shorthand, enough of a shorthand version of all that's implied there?
Something about the relationship with behaviorism.
Ah, yes. Q's connection to inter-behaviorism. Note, incidentally, that when you collect a concourse, there's all kinds of things that people say. There may be some things that some people say that other people just don't connect to at all, don't even know what the meanings of these words are, and that's quite possible in this situation as well. If you're coming from a certain kind of disciplinary direction, interbehaviorism is going to immediately set off certain kinds of associations that just may not be there at all, and usually that comes out in the Q sorting. That is, one group is giving this a +4 or a +5. Some people, others who know what it means and don't like it may be giving it -5, and there's going to be some who have never heard of it, and it's going to go under 0. It has absence of salience. So those kinds of differences often come out in the results. Yes?
Dr. Brown, I've always wondered about use of a concourse when you have like vague adjectives versus more specific type of statement and the sorting of them, like we're using kind of specific type statements. And if we have concourses maybe with vague adjectives where people don't understand.
Can you summarize that in one? That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
This is the relationship of a concourse to a more vague concourse as opposed to a specific concourse, more concrete.
Okay.
Dynamic versus static.
Well, dynamic versus static, or vague versus unvague. Well, let's stay with your first one for the moment. How about
I would suggest, Steve, equivocal versus unequivocal statements.
vagueness in concourses versus what did you say? Equivocal?
Well, I was going to say equivocal versus unequivocal statements.
Okay, let's just leave this one like vagueness in concourses to stand for what you're saying. 13 being
Equivocal versus the reliability of equivocal versus unequivocal statements.
equivocal versus
Unequivocal statements.
unequivocal
Statements.
statements.
I had another one too, completely different. Why are factors operant?
The operancy of factors?
The operancy of factors.
Okay. The operancy of factors. Intensive versus extensive studies. Does everyone have down through 14 the operancy of factors? Okay, so number 15 then. Intensive versus extensive studies, let's say. Intensive versus extensive studies. Yep.
Single case versus deliberative sampling.
All right. Done.
Single case versus deliberative sampling.
Okay, single case versus deliberative sampling. Yes. All right. There's a nice succinct one that gets right to the point. Q versus R. Number 18, forced versus free distribution. 19, structured versus unstructured Q samples. Note, incidentally, and this is quite common in concourses, that sometimes you get on a particular train of thought, and that stimulates other things in a similar train of thought. So now we're getting into some, I think, once you get into single case, intensive, extensive, Q versus R, force-free, you start getting all of these technical kinds of topics and issues of long standing in Q methodology as opposed to interbehaviorism, which is relatively new and restricted to just certain people who have that interest. These could have been a concourse all their own, quite apart from these other things, when you start getting into the technicalities of Q technique and Q method and so forth. So it works. Yes?
More than one idea in a P statement.
Q statement?
Yeah, if you put more than one idea in a Q statement.
Yeah. All right. Number 20, more than one idea in a Q statement. Yes.
Conceptual and technical limitations of Q.
Okay. Number 21, conceptual and technical, was it? And technical limitations of Q. And Bob, you had?
Hypothesis testing versus hypothesis generation.
Okay. Hypothesis testing
Versus hypothesis induction.
versus hypothesis induction.
Genuine hypothesis.
No, that's
Okay, hypothesis testing versus hypothesis induction. Ah, we're running out of,
Genuine hypothesis versus
pardon?
ad hoc hypothesis.
I'm not sure we have enough more. Oh, you've got some? All right. We don't need to exhaust this. We're not going to publish this or anything of that nature. So, so let's see. You may be starting to reach for possibilities now and going into more detail than you need to. Does someone else have a particular issue that's sort of not covered by any of these others? It is because now we might be interested more in it's kind of like the law of diminishing returns in the same way in interviews. After you've had an interview so long, pretty soon you sort of reach the outer limits and
You raise the screen so we can see both of them.
oh yeah, sure. Whoops. Yeah, I can do that. All right. Mike.
Q as art versus Q as science.
All right. 22, number 23. Q as art versus Q as science.
Genuine hypothesis and ad hoc hypothesis.
Ad hoc versus what?
Genuine hypothesis.
Genuine? Yes, all right. 24, genuine versus ad hoc hypotheses. Now, yes?
Interpretation of factors.
Interpretation of factors, that's a good one. Why didn't we think of that before? Interpretation of factors. That's number 25. Yes, Mick?
It was just my point earlier about what's actually happening with the data manipulation. What are the mechanics?
Okay, the mechanics of the data analysis.
Well, I can't. I say the analysis is about the interpretation as well, but you know the bit that precedes that, the statistical manipulation of the data. Yeah.
The black box.
How would you like to phrase that?
I'm not sure, but you know, some of the questions that I'm asked are, okay, well, why have you done that with the data? What does that mean in real life? Questions about fact analysis.
How about the technical and mechanical aspects of the data? Is that?
Technical reliability of Verimax.
It's not. I think it's a little broader.
It's not really that. It's relative novice to Q. Okay, I've done a Q study.
It's all right.
To it. Did all the concourse thing, got the statements, got hold of a PC package, fed the stuff in, got factors out, interpret those factors. I want to know about what happened in the payroll.
How would you phrase that then in a brief?
To learn about understanding maybe the mathematics of it.
The mathematics?
Yeah.
Does that capture it?
Yeah.
Okay. The mathematics of Q. All right.
Sorry, can you repeat saying?
The mathematics of Q. That's number 26. All right. We probably, yes. No, that's all right.
I'm interested in how people thought through their research question or problems and decided to use methodology. Not in the case of these. I'm interested in those processes of how people thought through.
Can you phrase that in something relatively simple here that captures all the ingredients?
I'm responding to the question, why did I come? One of the reasons I came to this study was the methodological thinking process.
Specifically, though, in the philosophical and methodological concerns prior to the use of Q, is that it, that leads you to adopt Q? How about methodological considerations prior to using Q? Does that capture it? All right. All right. 27. Why don't we stop at this point, unless somebody has a burning one. Methodological considerations prior to using Q. Methodological considerations prior to using Q. Yes.
How to get the most out of a factor array and how to know when you're through.
How to get the most out of a factor array. All right. How to get the most out of a factor array. Okay, let's one or two more.
For my medical colleagues, I'd like to have a method that I could explain to them sort of succinctly why they should understand this method or accept it, that I'm actually have important information to tell them from it when I use it.
Can you
So I guess,
bundle that?
I guess, how could I improve its acceptance to a group of people who have no knowledge of it?
Okay.
Which is somewhat like some other.
How to improve Q's acceptability to a new audience or
Yeah,
a new group. Does audience not quite get it?
yeah, new audience.
Is that all right?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. To a new audience. Okay. One more. Let's stop. 30 is a good number. Yes, Joe.
The interface between Q and the philosophy of social science.
All right.
Or philosophies.
Interface between Q and the philosophy of social science and philosophies of social science. So, the interface between Q and philosophies of social science. Well, as we're all aware, this process could go on and on and on, as depth interviews can go on and on and on. It's to some extent arbitrary where you stop. It's, I suppose, a subjective point at which you stop, that you don't feel like you're getting any additional information that's worth the additional effort. Like in economics, the marginal propensity to consume or something. At some point, it's not going to be worth more effort to interview. You've gotten most of the main ideas. You can, I think, start seeing ahead of time now why it is that Q does not require large numbers of respondents for the same kind of reason that after you've interviewed a few things over again, you're not getting that much more, that many more ideas that are new ideas about whatever it is that you're studying by interviewing one more person or two more people. In the same way with Q studies, you don't need a lot of people to find out that there's this way of thinking about it, and there's that way of thinking about it, and there's that way of thinking about it. And that's probably mainly what's at issue. And therefore, you don't need a lot of cases to be able to show that. We'll perhaps see more clearly why that's the case after we get through all the factor analysis.